Hi guys! Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Sam and today we're going to be talking about common breastfeeding myths and misconceptions. Let's get going. Alright guys, so today I'm going to be referencing my phone for some notes. So today we're going to be talking about some breastfeeding myths and common misconceptions. Disclaimer, I am not a lactation consultant or a physician. If you think that there's something wrong with you, your supply, or anything physically wrong with you, please consult your physician or lactation consultant because these are only common misconceptions and myths for some people. That does not mean that they will always apply to everybody. So if you have tried every avenue that these myths and misconceptions have led you down and you are still having issues, please consult a lactation consultant or your physician. Onto the video. So the first one that I want to talk about is nipple confusion. Now, nipple confusion is something that you're going to see in your mom groups, in your friend groups. You're always going to see somebody talking about nipple confusion. And there's a few different ways that you're going to hear about nipple confusion. First is the introduction of a pacifier as nipple confusion. Now, a lot of times a doctor will recommend that you wait 2 to 3 weeks to introduce a pacifier. The reason is because you want to establish a good latch on breastfeeding with a baby before introducing a pacifier, because pacifiers are shaped differently than bottles in a lot of cases, and the type of pacifier that your baby prefers is sometimes going to be a lot different than the type of bottle that they prefer. So they ask you to wait 2 to 3 weeks to introduce a pacifier nipple to your baby just so that you can make sure they have a good latch. Once baby has established a good latch, go ahead and give them a pacifier. If your baby has a really good latch from the get-go and they're having no problem feeding, then go ahead and introduce a pacifier. It's no worry for you to introduce a pacifier to your baby 2 to 3 days after they're born, 2 to 3 weeks after they're born. Some babies don't like pacifiers and that's okay as well. Go ahead and introduce a pacifier whenever you think your baby is ready for it. If you have any questions about when to introduce a pacifier to your baby, please consult your lactation consultant or your physician. Another way that people think that babies have nipple confusion is bottle nipples. Bottle nipple confusion is a very confusing topic to talk about. Now, here's the truth about nipple confusion with bottles. Your baby is not confused with a nipple and a bottle. Your baby's confused with the flow coming from a bottle. Let me explain myself. So when you purchase a bottle, all bottles typically come with a size 1 flow, and it says slow flow. So a lot of parents think, oh, slow flow is the slowest flow that they have. This is perfect for my baby. Here's the thing. When your baby is working at the breast to pull milk out, it takes a lot of effort for babies to pull that milk out. If you give them a size 1 nipple and they put in the same effort, it's going to come out way too fast. Breastfed babies typically use either a preemie or size 0 nipple depending on what brand of bottle you're using. So you have to buy a specific different nipple for your baby that does not typically come with the bottle. A lot of times what happens is that moms will introduce a bottle to their baby with the size 1 nipple and they think, oh, my baby doesn't want to take the breast anymore because they prefer the bottle. I have to pump now. No, what they like is that they don't have to work as hard on the bottle as they do at the breast. Or on the opposite, sometimes babies will refuse the bottle and moms will say, oh, my baby doesn't want to take a bottle. I've tried all of these different brands and baby will not take any of them. But they've never changed the nipple size. So what baby really doesn't like is that they don't like how fast the milk is coming out because they're putting as much effort in as they do with the breast, but it's coming out a lot faster and it's making them sometimes choke, or they'll spit up, or they overeat because they're taking in as much as they think that they need, but it's not the same. So 15 minutes on a breast and 15 minutes at a bottle is 2 totally different things. So it's not nipple confusion, it's flow confusion. So if you are introducing a bottle to your baby, please make sure that you are trying a 0 nipple on the bottle when introducing baby to that bottle. If at that point baby doesn't like the shape of the nipple, they're not taking to that bottle very well or whatever, then you can start crossing off different avenues to see what it is that your baby likes. Does baby really not like that nipple? Does that brand have a different nipple that you could try? Does baby just really not like that brand and you have other brands that you can try? All babies have their bottles that they prefer because all babies like to eat a certain way. Gauge your baby. See what they like. No nipple confusion. Flow confusion. My milk ran out or I'm empty. Now, this one is a popular one in mom groups for many different reasons, but I'm going to send it over to this lactation consultant that I found on TikTok. She has explained it better than anybody I have ever had explain it, and better than I could ever explain it myself. Here she is. Let's see what she has to say.
A lot of parents will ask me, how do I know when my breasts are empty? So they're actually never empty. Here's how breasts make milk. So breasts are filled with thousands of very small cells that make milk, not like large pockets that fill up with milk, which is actually what I believed when I was breastfeeding. So these thousands of cells are grouped in clusters, almost like grapes, and they're making milk all the time. As long as you're frequently stimulating and removing milk from your breast, they're always making milk. So if you don't remove milk from your breast for a period of time, it will accumulate. So when your baby comes to your breast, that's the first milk that they get. That's also what creates that firm, full feeling. But then when your baby comes to the breast, after they get that accumulated milk, 60 to 80% of what they get is made during that feeding. Your body is so responsive to your baby. If they keep working, so will your breasts.
As long as your baby is asking for milk, you're gonna get milk. So your body is constantly producing milk. As long as your baby wants milk, they're going to get it from you. Unless you have a physical reason why your body cannot produce milk. And there are women out there that can't produce milk as much as other women. And if you're one of those women, please consult your lactation consultant or your physician to map out a plan for your baby. If you are not one of those women, your body is going to produce the amount of milk your baby needs. That's why putting baby to breast is so important as much as possible, especially in those few first days, the few first weeks. You want to establish your supply so that your body knows that you're breastfeeding as much as you are, so that way it makes your milk for your baby. That's why when you go back to work and you have to pump as frequently as you would feed at home so that your body knows to continue making all of that milk. Underproducing milk. So many moms think that they underproduce milk. Why? Because their breasts are deflated, because they've got small breasts, because when they pump, they're not getting as much milk as some other moms. Now, as somebody that works in marketing, let me tell you something. If I place a full bottle of milk next to a lactation cookie, I'm going to get a lot more sales than if I place a bottle with only 2 ounces in it next to a lactation cookie. If people want to up their supply, it's going to make a lot more sales for me to say, you can go from this to this with a picture. Because of this, a lot of moms misconstrue the fact that a full bottle is not what you're going to get out of a pumping session. If you do, great. You have overproduction probably. I have an overproduction and I pump 1.5 bottles sometimes of milk for my baby during a pumping session. Is that normal? No. A normal pumping session is going to give you 1 to 3 ounces combined. That is a normal production. A lot of moms think that they are underproducing milk because they are not pumping 3 ounces out of each breast every time. Another reason why moms think that they are underproducing is because their breasts are flat or cluster feeding. Babies cluster feed in the beginning of their lives so that they can establish your milk supply. And a lot of moms think that because babies cluster feeding that they're not making enough. Because baby is acting hungry after they've just come off the breast, that they are not getting enough milk and they need to supplement, or they need to give them a bottle of extra milk, or that they must not be producing enough for baby, so baby is going to be hungry. If you want to gauge your production and if baby is getting milk, check how many wet and dirty diapers your baby is producing. If your baby is producing enough wet and dirty diapers, baby's getting food, because baby would not produce those diapers if they weren't eating properly. So as long as you are seeing enough wet and dirty diapers, you're fine. If you are pumping out 1 to 3 ounces in a pumping session, that is normal. Some people, I might also add, do not respond well to a pump. So because they don't respond well to a pump, they might not get anything out of a pump, but they'll do really great with a Haka. Or maybe their flange sizes are off, so they're not pumping as much as they regularly should because the flange size is off on their pump and their pump is not actually getting anything out of them. Don't go based off of a pump to determine how much your supply is. Go based off of your baby. Body armor is going to increase your supply. Now this also goes for the famous pink drink. Let me tell you why those two things work. The secret is coconut milk. Coconut milk is the #1 ingredient in both body armor and the pink drink. And the reason why coconut milk is helping people with this magical drink this and you're gonna up your supply is because coconut milk is hydrating. When you are breastfeeding, you have to hydrate a lot. You have to drink 100 ounces of water a day. I drink 3 of these water bottles in a day because that's how much water you have to drink to keep producing milk. You're either thirsty or you just have to drink that much to produce the milk. Either way, a lot of hydration is necessary. They tell you to hydrate when you are breastfeeding. And because of that, if you are drinking something like a pink drink and body armor and you're actually seeing an increase in your supply, it's not because they're magic drinks. It's because you were dehydrated and now your body is hydrated properly enough to produce the amount of milk that it needed to produce. It's not that that's just magical and it's going to increase your supply. So if you are finding that by drinking a pink drink or body armor, you're getting more milk, drink more water. Hydrate yourself. If you're not drinking 100 ounces of water a day, you're not drinking enough water. You don't need to be going out and buying body armor and pink drinks and spending all of this money to try and increase your supply. Just hydrate. If hydrating doesn't work, then consult a lactation consultant or your physician. But just hydrate. Alright guys, alcohol and breastfeeding. The myth is that if you are drinking, you cannot breastfeed. Or if you're breastfeeding, you cannot drink. Or if you want to have a drink, here's the worst one. Pump and dump. Now, I know I've been talking about how pumping doesn't really indicate your supply, but for some people, it is hard to get some milk to be able to save up milk, you know? Some people just make enough milk for their babies, and so the thought of pumping some milk and dumping it is horrible. It makes people want to cry to try to spill a drop, and to think that you're gonna pump a whole session and then have to throw it out is ridiculous. The rule for alcohol and breastfeeding is if you're safe to drive, you're safe to drink. The reason is because the way that alcohol gets into your breast milk is through blood. The amount of alcohol in your bloodstream is then going to transfer into your milk, supposedly. So the reason that I say supposedly is because you don't get a lot of alcohol that goes into your bloodstream. On top of that, it is then from your bloodstream to your breast milk that the alcohol has to go in. So it goes down. It's a minuscule amount of alcohol that goes into your bloodstream, into the milk. The reason that they want you to be safe enough to drive to breastfeed is because if you're coherent enough to drive, you're coherent enough to pick up your baby and place them on your breast and safely feed them. It's all about safety of the baby. Not really how much alcohol is in your breast milk, but more so the amount of safety that you have in your cognizance to feed your baby. So if you think that you're conscious enough to feed your child, feed your child. If you think you've had one too many and it would be a better idea to wait a couple of hours until you're sober enough to pick up your baby and feed baby, then that's fine as well. You don't have to skip out on your glass of wine at the end of the night just because you're afraid that you're going to get alcohol to the baby. As long as you're safe to drive, you're safe to feed. Caffeine makes your baby stay awake. Much like the alcohol to the breast milk, caffeine does not affect your breast milk. By you drinking coffee in the morning at any point in the day, by you drinking caffeine, it does not mean that your baby is not going to be able to sleep. Your milk does not automatically turn to coffee just because you drink coffee. So if someone is telling you, oh man, your baby isn't sleeping because you're drinking all of this coffee in the day, that's not true. Try to figure out if it's any other issue that your baby is having before you start deciding that it's caffeine. Is it the caffeine that is making your baby fussy enough to not want to nap? Or maybe is it the milk that you put in your caffeine and baby has a milk intolerance? Is it that your baby's gassy? Is it that they're so overtired that they don't want to nap? Or is it that you're trying to put baby down for a nap, but their wake hours are extended because they got older, and so now they're not going to nap after every feeding, but they're going to nap after every other feeding? Look at all of the signs that your baby is giving you, because caffeine does not affect your baby and their ability to fall asleep. It's just not a thing. Not enough caffeine would be able to enter into your breast milk for your baby to all of a sudden not want to sleep. Switching baby during feedings. Now, this is a common misconception, not a myth. You do sometimes have to switch baby between feedings. The common misconception is that you always have to switch baby when you're feeding. That's not true. Some babies prefer feeding on one side at a time. My daughter prefers to feed on one side at a time because when she was born, she was so small that she would fall asleep during feedings. So the ability for her to switch back and forth was just taking too much energy out of her, and she was not feeding as much, and so she was losing weight. So our doctor recommended to try feeding on one side at a time and then seeing if that was going to make her gain some weight, and it worked. And she just likes feeding on one side at a time. That's okay for me. Some moms prefer feeding one side at a time. Some moms prefer switching off breasts between feedings. Sometimes babies feed for a long time, and that's okay. And if you want to switch from one breast to the next so that your baby can get more milk because this one's still producing milk but this one's kind of full, that's okay. Some babies prefer to switch, some babies don't. It's okay to switch, but it's also okay not to switch. You don't have to switch babies. It's not like a strict rule that you have to switch babies halfway through their feeding. They're going to feed for 20 minutes. They have to feed for 20 minutes. And so at the 10-minute mark, I'm going to switch them. It's also not a good idea to forcefully switch babies if they are continuing to eat properly on one side because of foremilk hind milk imbalance. What foremilk hind milk imbalance is, when you are breastfeeding, for the first 10 to 15 minutes you are producing foremilk. It's a lot more hydrating, a lot waterier, and is what your body is going to produce first. And then after that, your body's going to start producing your hind milk. It's the milk that's very rich and fatty.
Editing Sam here. So I just realized that my video somehow didn't continue recording after a certain point, and I didn't hear it stop, and the rest of my video is what I thought me turning the camera off, which was actually me turning the camera on. Not sure how that happened. So if you see a wardrobe change all of a sudden, that's because I had to refilm the last bit of my video and my outro. Thank you.
Wardrobe change because of a camera malfunction. So let's continue. We were talking about foremilk hind milk imbalance. So you know your baby has foremilk hind milk imbalance when they have frothiness in their diaper. And if you think your baby has foremilk hind milk imbalance where they're getting too much foremilk, not enough hind milk, then you might want to talk to your lactation consultant or your physician to see if they can map out a plan for you to maybe stop switching baby, or if you may need to pump before you feed baby to get some of that foremilk out and get to that hind milk a little faster. Then they will go ahead and they will make a plan with you on how to help your baby do that. But you want to make sure the baby gets that hind milk. So sometimes switching babies is not the best idea. So just because some moms work well with switching babies from breasts does not mean that all moms do it. So just know that this is a common misconception, not a myth. Switching breasts is normal for some moms, not normal for others. Supplementing with formula. The myth behind supplementing with formula is that you need to supplement with formula until your milk comes in. Do you remember that lactation consultant that we visited earlier? Here she is. Why don't we consult her about what your milk coming in is like?
When will your breast milk come in? So I don't love the way that we use this phrase because breastfeeding parents, pregnant parents, their milk comes in when they're about 10 to 14 weeks pregnant. That's when your body starts to make milk. So after your baby arrives, that big transition that you have, it's just a change. Your milk just transitions from colostrum to mature milk. And it does so at exactly the same rate as your baby's belly grows and has a higher need. It's this really beautiful and pretty perfect system. So when we talk about your milk coming in, usually what we mean is that big transition that happens, and that typically happens by the end of your baby's 4th day of life.
Right. Your milk doesn't need to come in because it's already been there. Your body has been creating milk your entire pregnancy. Now, yes, for the first few days, your baby's going to be getting nothing but colostrum. And you don't make a lot of colostrum, but it's okay. Babies don't have big stomachs in the beginning, so they don't need a lot of colostrum. And you never stop making milk. Your milk just transitions. Now, I'm going to post a picture right here so you can see the difference between colostrum, transition milk, and mature milk. So the mature milk is what you need to wait to come in. But until then, you do produce colostrum and transition milk. So your baby is never gonna go hungry. You're not gonna have to give your baby something for 3 to 4 days until your milk comes in because you're not producing absolutely nothing. If it was like that, then a lot of babies wouldn't make it past the first couple of days because you would have absolutely nothing to give them. Your body is created to feed your baby. And if you are breastfeeding and you start off from the very beginning and you continue putting baby to the breast, then baby is going to demand that milk from you and your mature milk is going to come in a lot faster. So you don't need to supplement with formula. Another thing that you have to remember when you supplement with formula is that you need to replace that supplement with a pumping session. On top of that, formula digests a lot slower than breast milk. So a lot of times there's this common misconception that if you give baby a bottle of formula at the end of the night that you're going to get a better night's sleep because baby's gonna sleep a lot longer. The reason that that happens is because formula is digested slower, so baby doesn't need to wake up as often to eat. The problem with that is that if you don't feed baby during the night, your body doesn't know that it needs to create milk and your supply goes lower in the most important time that you need to be creating that bond and requesting that milk from your body. So it's not actually a very good idea for you to be supplementing with formula at night just so that you can get a couple of extra hours of sleep because that's not what baby needs from you. Also, it's not a very good idea to be introducing different formulas or formula in general to your baby if you're planning to exclusively breastfeed. One bottle of formula at night just so that you can sleep longer sometimes can be detrimental to baby and it can cause them tummy issues because they're not getting formula all the time and some formulas aren't really good for babies' tummies. And if you're planning on exclusively breastfeeding and you're only using formula at night, then switching off between different formulas to find out which one baby is not going to react bad to is actually just kind of expensive and really not good for babies. So try not to supplement with formula unless your lactation consultant or your doctor has told you that it is necessary for you guys to do so and you guys have mapped out a plan for how to work your breastfeeding and supplementing together. But if you guys are just supplementing because you think your milk hasn't come in or because you feel like baby is too hungry. Remember we were talking about cluster feeding earlier? A lot of parents think that when baby's cluster feeding that they're not producing enough, so they have to supplement with formula. The problem with that is that when babies are cluster feeding, they are actually requesting your body to produce more because their tummies have grown, so they need more milk out of you. They need you to produce more milk, so they're producing more milk for you. And if you don't latch baby in that most important time, then your body isn't producing all of the milk that baby needs. And if you're giving a bottle of formula, it's digested slower. You're going longer in between breastfeeding sessions, which means that your body isn't going to produce milk as often as it needs to. Make sure that you're only supplementing with formula under the guidance of your lactation consultant and your physician. On to the next one. Fenugreek. Now here's the myth behind fenugreek. A lot of times people believe that fenugreek is this magic supplement that will make you start producing a lot more milk. And a lot of times people take fenugreek in the wrong time. When you take fenugreek, please take it under the guidance of a lactation consultant or your physician, because you need to up your milk supply. Because the problem with fenugreek is that it sometimes actually is detrimental to your supply and will do the reverse, and instead of helping you lactate more, it's actually tanking your supply. And you can try anything that you possibly can. You can hydrate, you can pump more, you can put baby to breast all if you want, but the fenugreek can be detrimental to your supply. For that reason, a lot of supplement companies like Legendary and Nature's Made, and a lot of companies that create lactation supplements will avoid fenugreek, because the odds that you are one of the people that fenugreek is against is more common than the ones that would be for. Rather than harm your supply, they just don't add it as an ingredient. So with fenugreek, I'm gonna say it's a common misconception that it will magically help your supply increase. Please ask a lactation consultant or your physician if you should start fenugreek, so that you can avoid tanking your supply in case you are one of those mothers who it does not work on. Alright guys, Karen wanted to join me for the outro, so that is it. Those are some breastfeeding myths and common misconceptions. If you like this video and you want more like this, hit that like button down below, subscribe if you haven't already. Here are my social media handles, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye! Say bye, Mama!